Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I am so excited. I have a new friend on with me, Amanda Younts. We are this is so cool because like she does a bunch of like internal work with leaders, and I do like a ton of external work and internal work. So we are actually going to talk about what resistance looks like internally, what internal resistance looks like. I'm so excited because this is very important to the resistance work that often doesn't get talked about. So, first, before we dive in, Amanda, I'm so glad you're here on with me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. So, if you could just let everyone know what do you do now? Like, how do you help folks in the world?
Absolutely. So, I am a third generation educator. And so, even though I left a 20 plus year career in public education, I did not leave educating people. That is my passion. I wore many, many hats in education. And the one thing I loved is educating people to be able to have the tools to solve their own problems and empower them to build the life they want. So if I can educate and instill that knowledge, I want them to go and apply it and do it. So I also have a master's in clinical psychology. So the behavior management side is a huge piece for me of just understanding how humans interact with each other and the world and then themselves, which is the internal piece.
I love it. And when you say behavior management, it's not how do we get kids to do what we want? It's how do us as humans, big humans,
Yes.
manage our own selves.
Absolutely.
Hmm
When we are regulated and managed, how much that impacts how we show up in the world and show up for others. And
hmm
that's really the key is
Yeah.
knowing yourself before you can try to know someone else.
Yeah. And our external world really
Yeah.
mirrors our internal world,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, I know, for example, when I'm working with a leader and there is just like chaos around them, I know, right? Like their office is messy and there's confusion. I know there is internal chaos and confusion inside of them, right? So before we dive in, you do have a business now, right? You worked
I
with the
do.
district in Oklahoma, and you have this like beautiful business where you work with women in their midlife. Did I say that
Mhm.
correctly?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, like helping to empower them and like catalyzing them into their kind of their next, part of their life. So I'd love you to just what is the name of your business?
Midlife Catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And that really came from the, that script of a midlife crisis because that people looked at me like, oh, she's in crisis. She's leaving this steady, stable job that was absolutely not fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that it wasn't for other people,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not what filled me up. It is not what lit me up. And the key that lit me up was being able to teach leaders, to
Mm-hmm.
grow leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do so many other hats
Mm-hmm.
and roles within the job that that really took a back seat. And I was like, how can I take the skills, knowledge, training, and lived experiences that I have and turn that into a business?
I love
And
it.
so I really focus on women because we are so ingrained of you should just be appreciative. You should
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the role you have, the title you have,
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of work around identity
Mm-hmm.
and how we see ourselves in midlife and what those titles may be
Mm-hmm.
to really, even if you aren't the superintendent, the
Mm-hmm.
principal, you are the CEO of your own life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so as a teacher, I turn that into you impact change and growth in 150 lives. As a building leader, you're impacting and growing. As a mom, people, kind of downplay the language and how they refer to themselves. You are the CEO of your household. You raised three kids. That is not easy work,
Mhm,
right? To
mhm,
successfully do that. So when we can reframe how we see ourselves, it
mhm.
catalyzes us to reach our true potential.
And regular listeners know I have my framework, the Catalyst Mindset. So I love that you and I use this same word because it is powerful. It is
So
powerful.
powerful.
So I want to jump right in. We're going to talk about internal resistance. What causes internal resistance?
I feel like it's two things. It is the inner critic
Hmm.
and those inner scripts and voices that could be so related to past history, trauma, situations that then lead into the shoulds
Hmm.
and the you should be doing this.
Hmm.
You should just be grateful that you've had this life. You don't, all those narratives, you don't deserve more, you don't deserve um, to step into the leadership role
Hmm.
and to have what you really long for. So that when those voices take over
Hmm.
and we don't have a way to release them is when
Hmm.
it really destroys us.
For
So a
sure.
lot of what I do is working with women on recognizing and acknowledging where that inner resistance is coming from because
Hmm.
we may not even be aware.
Hmm.
I know for a long time I had it and I worked with some people that just thought it was normal,
Hmm.
like that this
The
should
shoulds are
that the
normal.
shoulds are normal.
This is the truth.
Mhm.
People think the shoulds are the truth, and they are literally the opposite of the truth.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
so I shared with you that I have this shoulds framework, and Amanda, you do not know what it is. You just know that I have
Yes.
this. Are
And
you
I
ready for
cannot wait to hear about it. I'm so
it?
excited.
I think I've never done this on the podcast, but I have a PowerPoint, or I have a slide that I could kind of show you. Let's see if
Yes,
I
let's
can. I
see
don't
it.
know. Oh, there we go. Let's see if I can. All right, I'm gonna screen share in a moment. Here we go. Here we go. All right, for those of you watching on YouTube, you can also experience this screen share. All right, this. All right, can you see it?
Yes.
So this is the expectation continuum. So one of the things that I really was looking at over the years, because I've been doing the shoulds work for many years. And what I noticed was, folks, I'd say, okay, identify your shoulds, and now you don't use those shoulds to guide your leadership because it's a form of internal resistance. And they would say, but the teacher should do it. And so I really was getting very interested in what part of the should is important to keep,
Mhm.
right? So then I looked at, like, what's the anatomy of a should? And so I
Love it.
zoomed out, and I really, so here's a word. Should is a modal in English. I want to acknowledge. Should actually has a number of what we use should in a number of ways. The way I am taught, because sometimes should is advice, right? Should can be a number of things. I'm not talking about all the ways we use should. I'm talking about the way you and I are talking about when we should ourselves and we
Yep.
should other people and we're shoulding everywhere and making a mess, right? So here's the expectation continuum. What I discovered was shoulds are an expectation that I either have of myself or someone else and some kind of value judgment.
Yes.
So I think you should do it because I think it's good, right? Or
Right.
I think you shouldn't do that, or you should know, right? Not to do that because that thing is bad, right? There's a value judgment on that thing, right? And then the thing we want to shift to, we want to keep that, there's still that expectation, right?
Right.
Sometimes, actually, when we really look at our shoulds, we're like, actually, I don't have that expectation. We kind of get lost in the morality of it. We're like, oh, actually, it's not important to me. But we might want to have like, I should go to the doctor. Well, right, there's a judgment like you should go to the doctor, you should go to the doctor, right? Well, there's an expectation I go to the doctor because I have this like symptom. It's like a little wacky and I want to get that checked out. So the expectation, go to the doctor. But we want to shift to support. So we want to shift from our shoulds to support. How do we do that? We want to shift from having a judgment about it to curiosity and asking ourselves, how can I support myself or how can I support them in accomplishing this expectation? How can I support myself in going to the doctor? Right.
Right.
So I'm curious, like what are your thoughts on the expectation continuum?
Well, I love it because judgment is such a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing, are we judging ourselves? Are we judging others? And then being open to that gets into those curiosity questions
Mm-hmm.
rather than stopping yourself before going with the judgment and assuming,
Mm-hmm.
tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding. We're great as leaders with other people.
Mm-hmm.
We've been coached to do that. We're not great with understanding ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're not great with being curious about where and why we're having the expectations we do.
Mm-hmm. For ourselves.
Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
which then just builds because those unmet, unresolved expectations, you get
Mm-hmm.
the judgment, you get resentment, and then you just get a toxic environment and
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece, when people go, okay, so why don't you? The
Mm-hmm.
should is
Mm-hmm.
the underlying fear. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't go to the doctor. You should go to the doctor. Well, I'm fearful of what's going
Mm-hmm.
to happen. Or you actually already know.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you
Mm-hmm.
to stop drinking
Yeah.
16 sodas and eating red meat. And you just, that's the resistance. I
Mm-hmm.
know what they're going to say. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to hear it. I'm not at the place and I'm not ready.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that self-judgment is really powerful, right? Because not only, when I say I should, oh, this is a good should for me. It's good because it's relevant. I'm not, I don't think it's, so it doesn't help me though. So a should I have about myself currently is I should not look at my phone before bed. I know. And I do. And so there's that expectation to not look at my phone before bed. The issue isn't the expectation. The issue is I'm judging myself for it because I know better. I know the research. I tell other people not to do it. It's like the doctor that
Well,
smokes.
yes. Well, and it's boundaries. Again, I tell other people to set the boundaries that I don't hold, but I justify it in my businesses online. So
Hmm.
much of what I do requires
Hmm.
connection through the
Hmm.
phone and technology and social media. So
Hmm.
I can justify it,
Hmm.
but it's not okay.
Hmm.
It's not good for my sleep, my mental health, even
Hmm.
really setting myself up for the next morning.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. So shifting. So, even just giving this example of shifting from I shouldn't look at my phone before bed to how can I support myself?
Mhm.
And not looking, right? And it lands differently.
So
It
much
has so
better.
much more self compassion, right? And I want to say this. The goal is not to judge ourselves and other people into behaving.
Yeah. Well, and it's
Right.
the shame cycle, and
Yeah.
we're not going to get there that way.
Yeah. And what you resist persists. So if I'm shooting myself or shooting other people, I'm resisting them and subconsciously keeping that very thing around.
Yes.
And I think that's the danger. And that's the thing I want to say about the danger of the shoulds, right?
Right.
So what other thoughts do you have about inner resistance?
The big piece is awareness.
Uh-huh.
Are we aware of what we're even resisting? And so I get into the problem behind the problem
Okay.
and really kind of diving into the root cause of why we're resisting. A lot of times we want to give quick fixes and we want to have, band-aids. But when we listen to that internal and identify it, that's where you really start to see, oh, I have a bigger problem than what I'm addressing. I believe wholeheartedly in the power of journaling and
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't automatically mean pen to paper. So I think journaling has a negative connotation because people think, oh my gosh, she wants me to write a narrative, and I hated that. There are so many other ways to stop and listen and hear yourself and become aware. And when the journaling, the mindfulness
Uh-huh.
come together and are integrated, that's when the power of it to help you start to realize those internal struggles.
Yeah. What are other alternatives to what we traditionally think journaling is?
I love pictures, where
Mm.
picture journaling, it's almost going back to old school, I would say a collage. I remember
Oh,
as a child, and you'd have the
yeah.
magazines, and even when I first started teaching, do it with my students. We don't even have magazines anymore, right? But
Mhm.
we do have pictures on our phone. And
Mhm.
so that does two things. It, helps you be aware of what is in your surroundings.
Mhm.
What can you be grateful for? What can you identify that's maybe causing you some stress and frustration? Use those pictures, if that artistic kind of side of the brain, not so much the writing side, to bring that out of what is a picture emoting out of me? What is my response to that? How am I reacting? Um, Even song lyrics. I will use a lyric and use that as
Oh yeah, I guess I
a
have too.
yeah.
I've gotten like a song lyric stuck in my head on loop, and
Yes.
I finally was like, "Why is this on loop?" And I wrote it down in my journal, and I was like, "Oh, okay,
Right.
isn't that interesting?"
Mhm.
I never thought about that as a leaping off point. It happened
Yes.
accidentally to me.
Right.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
with technology now, there's so much more we can do as far as, apps. I'm a big day one app is
What is
free.
that?
It's just an app, and you can jot down from the day in your phone. So you can voice record it. You don't even have
Hmm.
to write, uh, reflect on the day, reflect on a thought, reflect on, I just left this book club or this meeting and I am so on edge.
Yeah.
Ooh, why? What is happening?
Yes. That's really great. That's really great. One of the terms I use a lot is being a professional noticer, right? And I think that's one way I describe being self-aware. And it's like,
Mhm.
please be a professional noticer. But what I noticed is folks need something specific to notice. It's not just like notice everything, because sometimes we don't know what to notice, right?
Mhm.
Can you give people what are some examples of things you tell your clients to be self-aware about, what I'm calling being a professional noticer about? What are some things they potentially could be helpful for them to notice?
Obviously the internal and the thoughts, but even the sensory. How are you, that hair on the back of your neck, the stomach churning? How are you leaving someone someplace feeling?
Hmm.
Notice when you're taking this phone call or responding to an email, showing up in a meeting, how are you feeling? That sensory side, and then reflecting on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then how do we go about changing it? In If it's really something that's bothering me, triggering me. We can't all go quitting our jobs, and
You're right.
it's a scarce job market. We can't find something, but you've got that then awareness helps you up front
Do
to
something about it.
know I'm
Mhm.
stepping into someplace that's not great for me.
Uh-huh.
What am I going to do after to recharge
Yeah.
so that I then don't take it out on others and myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
That when people really talk about routines and
Mhm.
habits and the self-care, those are the steps of self-care, of being
Mhm.
able to step in and know, ooh, this mother-in-law is draining. So when
Mhm.
we get in the car, I'm going to put on my favorite song or a meditation and recharge. So then I'm not snipping with my kids or husband kind of thing.
For sure.
But it's no, that's the awareness that
Yeah.
we are so busy. We're so
Giving. Oh,
on our autopilot.
yes.
We don't even
Yes.
take the time. Yep.
I read this great book that talked about like often people in service
Mhm.
industries like education are more human givers than human beings. And
Yes.
so in this process of giving, we forget to be. And what I've noticed in myself and other people that I coach, because we've normalized giving so much of ourselves, folks have ways of overcompensating or compensating for that, right? I feel drained, and so I eat
Mhm.
to fill myself up, literally and emotionally, right?
Right.
I feel emotionally drained because I gave all this stuff today, so I'm going to go and eat. What are some other ways people uh uh I don't know how to say that, inaccurately or unhealthily try to balance that out, right? And kind of balance out overgiving and feeling drained and try to quote unquote fill themselves up, but it's not in the way. It's not a healthy way to fill ourselves
Oh.
up. What are some other ways you've seen?
Well, and I will just tell on myself because this is a constant battle for me is exercise.
Mhm.
That in my life, I have taken it too far. In the fall, I had a horrible uh, Achilles injury because rather than just doing the 2 to 3 miles a day that I knew, right?
Mhm.
I would do six.
Mhm.
And eventually it catches up with you. It's the same with eating. So, but we stigmatize
Mhm.
certain behaviors and others we put on a pedestal of,
Mhm.
look,
Yeah.
oh, she ran a half marathon, she did 6 miles, she can do all this yoga, or
Mhm.
even the performative of book challenge. And this was the one people were like, well, I'm a leader. I need to read all these books. What are you doing with that information and
Yeah.
that knowledge? You know,
Yeah.
is it really helping you, or is it just kind of a performative
Yeah.
metric that's another people pleasing standard? So, um, and then the easy one is, well, the vacations.
Yeah.
What I have found is when people are finding the joy in the small things and the incremental daily steps,
Mhm.
they don't need a vacation
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
life,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yeah.
there's that appreciation in the day.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you for naming that. That is, I've had an episode on that. Like work, it's called, the title of the episode is "Work Life Balance is Bullshit,"
It is.
and it's. I'm so glad you're with me. Um, so okay, this has been such a great conversation. We have to wrap up now. What are some tips you could give the leaders and coaches listening today to move forward that they could immediately implement in their own well-being?
I start with a quick audit
Mm-hmm.
and simple things. A nightstand. We talked about sleep, but not just the phone and the digital. What does your nightstand look like? And if it's messy and cluttered, and that's the last thing you're seeing before you're going to bed, then your mind's messy and cluttered. Does it nurture your supportive sleep? You can take the same with a pantry, audit, a time audit. And I tell people, don't do it all because
Mhm.
anyone else in your household is going to be really upset that you just threw out, all the candy. but just
Mhm.
kind of start to notice and be aware
Such a great vision.
uh,
Yeah.
of those things. So then you can, oh, yes, I, I know sleep is so critical and is really the foundation of everything
Mhm.
else because when I get my sleep,
Mhm.
then actually I eat better the next day because I don't
Mhm.
need 3 coffees to keep fuel me. You know, it's
Yeah.
the spike and it's the steamroll. So
Mhm.
those small micro habit steps.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for suggesting that. So this has been such a fun conversation for me talking about internal resistance, right? And
Yes.
how that impacts the external resistance to change that we so often experience in schools when change happens. So thank you so much for being on the show. And I would love you to share where can folks find out more about what you do and even be able to contact you.
Midlife Catalyst across all social media platforms. And my website is midlifecatalyst.net. And that way you can immediately contact me and find out more.
I love it. I love it. So Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was great.